For quite a while now, we've been addressing the issue of identity, whether we're talking about individual identity, collective identity, historical identity. There are a number of issues that are surfacing related to history, biology, psychology, and then pulling that all together with respect to identity. And so we're going to quickly address this issue of the importance of self-identity as we prepare for another discussion related to this. And so there are a few questions that hopefully you can entertain and then answer, and then we can go forward from there. And as you are thinking about this construct of identity, keep in mind that identity encompasses a number of dynamics. One, when you're talking about self identity, you're looking at self concept, you're looking at this idea of constructing the self or putting the self together, the self perspective, the schema of the self. What are the thoughts that an individual might have about the self, about that construction, about that identity. And then also this issue of self-esteem. And so all of these things are actually tied together with where we are going with this discussion related to the current situation and biology, psychology, and history. What's going on is there are a number of things that are presenting, that are suggesting that history has not only been rewritten, but apparently is in the process of being rewritten yet again, calling into question some of the things that have been presented more recently as evidence of the original rewriting. So there's quite a bit of confusion going on, and hopefully we can get some sort of clarity in order to go forward, because that clarity is imperative with respect to some of the things that are going on right now. So there are some questionable things that have come up, and we will address those, and hopefully we can get that clarity together and then address some of the dynamics surrounding whatever the clarity happens to be, and then some of the implications. And so we've talked about this before related to these conflated identities. And so this issue of conflation is becoming more and more prominent. And so hopefully we can come to some sort of consensus about who the people are that we've been talking about. Now, based upon some of the research, some of these identities appear to be interchangeable. Some of these identities actually appear to be colonizer, settler, dynamics where the original people have been moved out and then other people have taken over. And so therefore the original people are sort of lost in terms of the narrative. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at these groups that have sort of this intertwined identity going on. You have the Moriscos, you have the MARRANOs, you have the Africans, and you have the indigenous Americans. And so we want to come to some sort of understanding about these discrete identities to get a better understanding about whether they are actually discrete or in fact just different manifestations of different colonizer dynamics over time. Now, there is evidence to suggest that the Moriscos and the MARRANOs are basically the same people, even though you have these different names and there's a distinction between these two groups based upon religion. However, genetically, there's a possibility that these are the same people and they just have different religious traditions. And so there's also the dynamic whereby those two groups went into Africa and also went into America. And there's a question about whether those two groups actually took on the identities of the indigenous people in those lands, usurped them, colonized them, engaged in some sort of ethnic cleansing with the males in those particular areas and then supplanted the male identities in those places and then replace them with their own. Now, right now, you have these 4Y haplogroups that are present in different percentages in different places. And so it would be helpful to get some clarity about what your understanding is about who occupies each of these haplogroups. And so when you think about the MORISCOs, which are the Moors, uh, do you understand them to be haplogroup A, haplogroup E, J, R? Do you understand the MARRANOs, who were understood as the Jews in Iberia, as haplogroup A, E, J, or R? And then when you think about the Africans, we're talking about the West Africans because we are looking at a pattern here. So when you think about the people in West Africa right now, are you understanding them to be primarily A, E, J, or R? And then with respect to Indigenous Americans, are you understanding them to be haplogroup A, E, J, or R? Now, there are some dynamics going on with the current situation related to this identity expression, this identity ownership. And if we can get a better understanding about who these different groups of people are and whether we are talking about an extreme colonizer dynamic, we'll be able to have a better discussion when we have our discussion that's going to be following this one. So if you would not mind, if you could please share your understanding of the haplogroup that goes with each of these particular groups of people. We're talking about males when we're talking about these groups, by the way. So when we're talking about that Y haplogroup. And so if you could provide some clarity about your understanding, hopefully we can get on the same page. And then we're going to address something else that is going on with respect to self-identity and the implications for this assertion with respect to the current situation. Thank you, and remember, knowledge is power. Take care. See you soon.